Good morning, and thank you for attending this important press conference. I'm Jimmy Cochran-Pratt, co-president of the ERA Alliance, and this is Terry Wally, who is my co-president, and she's available to answer any questions that arise, especially out of the packet. Thank you, Terry.
You're welcome.
And all of the rest of the folks in green shirts are our teammates. We are a volunteer organization and not-for-profit, so we are working on a wing and a prayer most days. So, welcome to International Women's Day. We selected this important day to release a poll conducted by Meredith College poll, as well as to announce the ERA bill for the new session of the North Carolina General Assembly. A copy of the actual bill is in the press packet, along with a letter from Governor Roy Cooper extending greetings, celebrating International Women's Day and the 100th anniversary of the introduction of the Equal Rights Amendment. The ERA Alliance is a nonprofit, and our entire dedication is to the ratification of the ERA in North Carolina to be added to the ratification from the U.S. Congress, or excuse me, in the U.S. Constitution. According to Article 5 of the U.S. Constitution, the ERA has met all of the requirements to become the 28th Amendment to the Constitution. Despite this, it is important that North Carolina General Assembly ratify the ERA to show its support for women in our state. We have our chief bill sponsors with us today who will introduce the ERA bill and answer your questions. And we have a lot of other legislators here, and we're just thrilled. Thank you, thank you. But first, we are going to welcome the student team from Meredith College. Are they in here?
Here.
Yay! Who conducted the poll, and they know all the secrets, so thank you for being here. Also, they have to get back to class by 11, as does Dr. David McLennan, who is a professor of political science and director of Meredith Poll. And we welcome you, and we're going to let you come forward and tell us what's going on.
Thank you. Thanks for coming out here. It's been a pleasure to work with the ERA Alliance. It's an honor to be up here with all these wonderful legislators. I appreciate their support. But to be really quick, we polled North Carolinians in 2019 about this issue, and again this year. And the good news is that support went up, and opposition went down. And so well over 70% of North Carolinians think the ERA should be ratified, certified, and put into the United States Constitution. And I just want to mention one other thing, and then I'll turn it back over, is we also surveyed North Carolinians about their perceptions of discrimination. And just to make it short, North Carolinians think that a lot of groups are discriminated against, including women. And so it gives additional impetus for the passage of this bill in the North Carolina General Assembly and an inclusion in the United States Constitution. So I would say thank you again for coming out to support this. Let's push it to the finish line and get this done.
Thank you so much, Professor. Good morning. I'm Representative Julie Von Haefen. I represent District 36 here in Wake County. Yesterday, I filed House Bill 302, a bill to ratify the Equal Rights Amendment as the 28th Amendment to the United States Constitution. I have proudly been the primary sponsor of this bill for the last 3 legislative sessions, and here on International Women's Day to discuss why North Carolina must join the 38 other states that have ratified. I want to give a quick shout out to our other 3 primary sponsors in the House, Representative Carla Cunningham, who carried this bill for a long time and has now mentored me and turned this effort over. And then also 2 freshman members this year who I'm so happy to be on the bill, Representative Renee Price and Representative Lindsay Fraser. So in the 100 years since the Equal Rights Amendment was first introduced, we've seen legislation have been passed to allow more women freedom and equality. But unfortunately, due to recent events, we've seen that this country is moving backwards when it comes to women's rights. We've recently seen our rights being stripped away, especially when it comes to our ability to make healthcare decisions for our own bodies. The constitutional right to obtain abortion care was rooted in the 14th Amendment, right to privacy, in the Roe decision. But this all changed with Dobbs. The Equal Rights Amendment, which would add an explicit guarantee of sex equality to the Constitution, would protect the right to abortion and the full range of reproductive health care. And it's more critically needed now more than ever. Some people may ask why our state still needs to pass a bill to ratify the ERA after Virginia became the final state necessary for ratification in 2020. But North Carolina's own history has shown that a constitutional ratification is an important statement of states' rights at any time. Ratifying the ERA, even now, is a chance for North Carolina to make amends for being the last state in our country to ratify the 19th Amendment, which guaranteed women the right to vote. I don't know if you knew that, that we were the last state. Remember, 100 years ago, people were warning about the dangers of letting women vote. And remember, 70 years ago, people were afraid that integration of our schools and businesses would destroy our country as well. But every time our nation moves forward and amends our Constitution to make its citizens more equal under the law, the change is met with opposition, but it results in a stronger democracy. We became that beacon for the world, and it's time that North Carolina becomes a beacon in the South. We have a part to play in this 100-year-long saga. We owe it to the women to our state to continue this fight so that they can enjoy the same rights and protections as men. We cannot let another generation of women go through life without the knowledge that our country's Constitution guarantees them equal rights. I don't want that for me. I don't want it for any of the women in this room. I don't want it for my daughter, and I don't want it for any woman living in this state. On International Women's Day, I'm so proud to stand with my colleagues, my friends, and women across North Carolina who demand a seat at the table. We demand fair treatment, and we demand to be treated as equals in the eyes of the law. Thank you so much.
All right, good morning. Senator Natalie Murdock, proud to represent Durham and Chatham County, NC Senate District 20. Honored to be here with my Senate and House colleagues, along with my Senate other primary sponsors, Senator Julie Mayfield, along with Senator Natasha Marcus. And when Rep. Von Haefen was mentioning being mentored as far as doing work in this space, also want to acknowledge now a congressional member, Senator Valerie Foushee filed this bill, so I was a primary sponsor my freshman year, but she's now in Congress, and we know we also need congressional level support to get this done, and luckily there is bipartisan congressional support. And also on the drive-in this morning, just really thought about all the rights that we're fighting for, whether it be reproductive rights or the ERA. It made me think of one of my favorite Rosa Parks quotes, basically saying that every generation will have to fight to maintain the rights that were gained by that previous generation. So we're still having, unfortunately, so many of the same fights that folks should not have to continue to fight for from the 50s and the 60s. So we're still fighting for these very basic rights for women everywhere. So the ERA would guarantee equal legal rights for all American citizens, regardless of their sex. It requires states, like right here in North Carolina, to intervene in cases of gender violence, such as domestic violence and sexual harassment. It would guard against pregnancy and motherhood discrimination, and it would federally guarantee equal pay. There are many laws. There are many laws designed to protect women, such as the Violence Against Women Act and Equal Pay Act, but the interpretation of those laws really varies from court to court and state to state, so we need that equality across the board for all 50 states. This variance occurs because there is no constitutional standard for applying legislation that specifically affects women in this country. We need the language of the ERA to guarantee that these laws are interpreted and applied uniformly. The ERA is not simply a symbolic gesture. During the pandemic, women were leaving the workforce left and right at double and triple the rates of men. Women bore the brunt of the economic burden during the height of the pandemic. We need to ratify the ERA now and guarantee equal pay so that women have equal opportunities in the workforce as our economy continues to recover. I'm sure some folks will say, isn't it too late? Hasn't the timeline passed? No, it has not.
Yeah.
No, it has not. Congress has a renewed urgency to act with bipartisan support. And finally, there is never a timeline to do the right thing. Thank you.
Okay, I hope many questions have arisen in your mind for Dr. McLennan, for Julie, for Natalie, and so please fire away. David, you want to come?
Sure.
All right.
I think you guys did.
As you mentioned, 38 states have already passed this, right? Democratic-led, Republican-led states, or whoever's going to talk. But what do you all see as having been the key barrier here in North Carolina to getting this through? Is it necessarily a partisan issue, or is it something else?
I mean, it's disappointing that this has become a partisan issue because, you know, we have our Republican women here in the House, and I would hope that they would support their own equal rights. You know, it's funny, we have a women's caucus lunch today, and I'm hoping that to talk to a few of my Republican colleagues about signing on to this bill. I don't understand why it should be partisan. It applies to everyone, you know, in this country, and it would protect every single person. But I guess we'll know when these bills, if they're referred straight to rules, that will indicate that Republicans don't support equal rights for women, and that's a strong statement I think that they're making.
Michael, I would add that according to our poll, a majority of Republicans around the state do support passage of the Equal Rights Amendment, so it's not as partisan out there as it may be in here.
Go ahead.
Since this is the third attempt over the last 3 sessions to have this bill ratified, what is sort of, if I could ask just, have you received any likelihood or extra support from Republican legislators on whether they support this bill or additional support on this measure?
I would just state that with this poll, we're going to take this information to show, as the professor just mentioned, that there is bipartisan support for it, especially at the congressional level. We have U.S. senators that have signed on, so we're going to continue to make that message that it is not partisan. It's not something that we should be arguing about or fighting about, particularly when you look at future generations. I was shocked, particularly women under 30 that were completely unaware that they didn't have these rights. I mean, every year that I post about this, that we're doing this bill, I'm always underwhelmed by the young people that reach out to say, what do you mean this is not enshrined in the Constitution? So we're going to continue to make the argument that it's bigger than us and that we should be the generation that finally gets this right.
Is there additional outreach in specific communities or additional outreach this time to really extend out support and sort of outreach on this bill?
Give the coalition, do you want to talk more about what you've been doing as far as outreach?
Oh, okay. We are outreaching today. We have packets for every single legislator that has a copy of the bill itself, which is brilliant. Please take some time to read this bill. It gives a lot of history about North Carolina that probably you did not know how the state has interacted with the Constitution. So please read that. We do editorials, we do interviews on the radio, we do op-eds. We have a variety of things we do for outreach, and Lori Bunton, who is just the former co-president, we have been on so many Zooms. COVID hit just when we needed to learn how to do Zoom, and probably I know half of you here from being in a Zoom meeting. So we do the outreach, but it is very, very frustrating when we do meet people, especially young people who say, it's not done already. And we're talking about the Equal Rights Amendment. It's 24 words, and more than once we have asked a legislator what they think about the Equal Rights Amendment and they say, I'm so sorry, I've not had time to read it. It's 24 words, people. And it's,
Here it is, right
and we're talking about over half the population in the United States. It's really a ridiculous argument. So I hope everybody who is here today will help us. Some of the laws were mentioned, like violence against women and other things, other laws that are in place, they are laws. And guess what? The Congress can overturn those, withdraw them, as can the Supreme Court. So we have to enshrine the ERA as a 28th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution.
Thank you. I wanted to say a few words about the gap. And that gap shows up in the voting trends. And what goes on in Raleigh lots of times doesn't reach back home. Lots of people are not as engaged. But I bet you more women across this country are engaged because of the Dobbs case. Other countries have already embedded inside of their constitution to include women. We seem to be last to move forward with the women being in the proper places that they deserve to be, and that is at the table on every issue concerning their bodies and their reproduction and equal pay. There is no reason in this century that we should not be paid for the same work that our counterparts do. So women are becoming more engaged, and we are concerned about the women leaving the workforce, but look at the carry of the load that they have, and they still are not paid fairly to support their families. It is outrageous. It is outrageous. Lastly, there's a generational issue here, because when you're looking at patriarchy that continues to exist in the General Assembly, it continues to exist. We go through that march every day down here. So we are not immune. We are in it just like you are. We're in it to fight for women, and it is not over yet.
I was handed a Post-it note that says biggest surprise in poll. I'm going to guess this is teeing up a question for David.
Thanks for playing along.
Thanks. Really, there were no big surprises. Like I mentioned, the support has increased, the opposition has decreased, and it's pretty universal. And so it's men as well as women support the passage of the ERA, Republicans, Democrats, unaffiliated, people of color, people who live in rural and urban areas. So, Michael, there's really no big surprise. And that's why we're sitting here in 2023 all just amazed that we're still talking about ratifying the ERA. And the support has long been there, and I imagine will continue to be there.
Thank you, everyone, for coming. Stay where you are. We're going to get a quick picture. So thank you, press.
And if any of you want any of us to come be a speaker, Rotary comes to mind. Every organization is a community. We will be happy to come and talk about Equal Rights Amendment. And we'll be happy to visit any of your classes.
Okay.
Yes. So thank all of you all so much for your efforts on ERA. Thank the entire team of Alliance volunteers. And as Julie said, we're going to grab a picture. And you might want to grab one of these wonderful signs up here to hold up. Thank you all so much.